I'm Ashton Addison from Blockwest Capital for Investment Pitch Media, and today on the Crypto Coin Show we have Stephanie So, co-founder of Geeq. Stephanie, welcome to the show, and thank you for taking the time today.
Thank you. Thanks, Ashton. It's a pleasure to be here.
You're very welcome. Let's just dive straight into the Geeq protocol, what multi-chain solutions that your team has been working on. I'm interested to hear what's special about this kind of multi-chain solution, because I believe that the future is multi-chain and all the blockchains should be able to speak to each other flawlessly. So let's just jump right into it with, to start, a high-level overview of a Geeq protocol and the solutions that your team has built thus far, and then we'll dive into everything multi-chain.
That sounds wonderful. So thanks for giving me this place to start. We also think that from the beginning that blockchain platforms had to be thinking about scalability from the beginning, and multi-chain was the obvious place to look for us. The protocol is something that we cared a lot about to make reliable. And what we wanted to do was we wanted essentially to create a technology that de-risked using various transfers and applications on these blockchains. So we've gone away from the area of finance and crypto and DeFi to concentrate on working on the underlying ways of making blockchain work in a way that you can count on. That's our thing.
Great focus, definitely. And I feel like developer focused and sort of heads down, sort of working on the long term. It's easy to sort of get caught up in crypto hype or prices of this and release dates that often get pushed back because you're focused on actually building a product for the long term.
Exactly right. I think it's got a lot to contribute to the future.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And now with this multi-chain, can you talk about how exactly does that work with Geeq? I know, are all of the different chains being launched internally, or people can just go and start launching their own chain through Geeq?
The ultimate vision is to have a platform that's open, and people could go on and launch their own chain. Yes. Mm-hmm. So the idea is that Geeq is developing an infrastructure that simply takes care of the blockchain protocol part. Mm-hmm. And if you are an application developer or a blockchain developer, you'd have your own idea in mind about the kinds of functions that you'd want, but you wouldn't necessarily know a lot about how to make the protocol safe, how to how the ledgers would work. That's our job. Mm-hmm. So if you wanted to have your own business that uses a dApp, you'd come to the Geeq hub and you'd combine your code with the Geeq validation code, and off you go.
Mm-hmm. Sounds easy. And I'd like to get a better scope of exactly how much your team has built and how long you've been working on it, because I know multi-chain protocols and any layer one protocol is many year job. It's not something that's built in a day. So how long has your team been working on this?
So the idea for making a new protocol was really begun in the very end of 2017. That's when blockchain was really hot. Everybody was jumping into it, and again, it looked risky. And I'm a very risk-averse person. I thought, wow, there's an opportunity here, but we need to go back to the drawing board. So I would say the real work started in December 2017, wow. And then we launched a token several years later, and I'm always reminded of that quote. Somebody very famous, a scientist, said, if you give me a problem, let me think about it for 90% of my time, and then I can solve it in the last 10%. And that's sort of what we've been doing. We've studied the industry and thought about the solutions, and now we've been in development for the last year and a half or so.
Wow, that's fascinating to hear. You often hear of the horror stories of the person who bought Bitcoin on the very top in 2017, and they had to hold through a multi-year bear market to finally reach a return that was way higher in the most recent bull run here in 2020. But it did take 5 years. I'm curious on your perspective of starting the company sort of at that top and then seeing 2018, 19, 20 as you're building, looking towards the future, seeing the market reaction and what people are thinking of cryptocurrencies and their underlying value as sort of depreciating as the price was going down.
Well, I think my reaction was sort of like everybody's, except we had this project going, and at the very beginning, when it was in the bull run and going to the top, I sort of had my head down all the time, like, oh, don't look at that, right? Because we're not ready. And then when things started going south, the problem for us was that you see some projects that start having problems, or people complaining about crypto as a industry, or blockchain as an industry. And we had to be very careful trying not to get tarred with the same brush. So that's been our challenge, I think, as the cycles go through, is to stay fairly heads down, just doing what we can do until the time is right to burst out.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Very cool. And you mentioned about making the protocol easy for app developers to be able to launch their app, or people that want to use applications and not have to worry about the blockchain underlying protocol part of things. Can you talk a little bit about the end users and the people that are using the dApps, or they're using their wallet or the assets, and the perspective of the ease of use and low barriers to entry, and how you're approaching that to reach more of a mass adoption?
That's my favorite topic. It's the end users, I think, who have to realize the value of these new services. So from the company perspective, we've come to the conclusion, really, that what Geeq is doing is it's a new kind of software company. And so the end users' ability to use the software and get value of it, to simplify their lives, to do things they've never done before, that's the real objective. That's how everybody wins, right? And so what we are doing is we're partnering with people who are my favorite kind of people, who have stayed blockchain agnostic in the way that they've been developing middleware and software and data analytics, who also believe that the interface for the end user should be super easy. And then our job is to make it easy for them. So the partners, right, to incorporate into their products. And so at every level, it gets easier up the tech stack. And we need to be secure enough and reliable enough that these technology partners will trust us, and adaptable enough that they can integrate it into all kinds of applications. And then ultimately, the user will benefit from both their products and this blockchain capability, which is new.
Definitely. And talking about the tech stack and adaptability, building an entirely new protocol is a lot of work. And you also, as you mentioned, you have to focus on interoperability as a multi-chain protocol. And now what I'm seeing in the industry is a lot of these other protocols connecting back through through the EVM, or interoperability to the blockchains that already have a large network effect. When you and your team were developing Geeq protocol from scratch, did you take inspiration from some of these other layer one protocols? or how do you initially design a multi-chain protocol? Do you do it with blinders, or do you take a look at Polkadot's ecosystem and Ethereum and what they've done?
We learn from everybody, right? This is a case where I would love more dialogue between projects, and I would say that there are specialists in every area. One of the reasons that we think that that multi-chain was so important, and then interoperability has to come after that multi-chain. Just functionally, that's the way you have to build it, but you have to have that problem in the beginning of your head. It's like what I said before, right? You have to lay out the entire problem, think about it for that 90% of the time. So I would say we started working on multi-chain and interoperability before others were. And the conclusion that we came to, which is a little bit different, is that in order for those links to be smooth, we decided to have a unified set of messages, a unified set of proofs that could be interpreted from each chain. Sometimes people say it's a unified security model, because if you go from one chain to another chain and they don't have the same security model, and I love getting into the weeds, so stop me if you want. But if the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, then the interoperability is subject to vulnerability. And so what Geeq is doing is saying, everybody understands this common protocol.
That's a great point, Stephanie, because what we've seen in the markets recently with decentralized exchanges and different protocols not really being fully interoperable and speaking to each other, having to use bridges to transfer assets from one blockchain to another, it's often that the bridge itself has a vulnerability, and we've seen hacks of up to $500 million or more through those bridges themselves, where the point was to be multi-chain and move this asset to a different blockchain, and in the process all of the funds were lost. So I feel like security, as you mentioned, is a super important aspect. And I'm curious on, obviously it gets technical, and you probably need the CTO and a team of cryptographers to figure out the best way to keep assets secure, but obviously that's a very important aspect of a protocol. Do you have any insight into the security aspect on Geeq being multi-chain?
Yes. So, and you're right. I worry a lot about the end users who are there's a commonplace assumption that the users or someone will always discipline the market, in the sense they'll always watch for a possible vulnerability. But the idea here is that people are doing fascinating things, but it's such a new field. And so there are very few people who are watching everything. And a lot of times these exploits come out of the blue. So what Geeq does is we really are stripping down things so parts are very well known to us. And that in the first iteration means that we're not building with any smart contracts. So there's no variety of smart contracts to keep track of. We know what the code is supposed to do, and we're making sure that the code does that, which takes a lot of testing, trying to make that robust. But at the end of the day, we're not introducing the kinds of things that are too sophisticated for what we can keep track of right now. And so keep it simple. Is the mantra.
Actually, I do like that approach, and I've seen that with other blockchains like the Cardano blockchain, which has been in development for years. And the joke for a while, the running joke was that they don't really have smart contracts yet. the major vulnerabilities of the bridge, and on Ethereum, almost every hack that's happened, not barring centralized exchanges, the DeFi hacks are all because of smart contract vulnerabilities and errors in the way that smart contracts were executed or coded. So having the protocol in a similar way that Cardano is building out the infrastructure layer first, and then introducing smart contracts when they see that the security is airtight, I think is a great approach.
Thank you. You're someone that I really like having known about Geeq. Yes.
Amazing. And I know, so there's still a lot to be done on that side, but one of the things that your team has already developed out, at least to start, is the Geeq network token. And I know that that's going to be an integral part of the ecosystem moving forward as it develops out further. Can you touch a little bit on that, please, on the token and how it will function throughout the ecosystem and how it will create a sustainable ecosystem for all the participants?
That's really important to part of your audience, I bet. One of the things that we do, two of us of the four co-founders are economists by training. And so things that we worry about are public goods and people shirking and people free riding and just not doing what they're supposed to do, right? Mm-hmm. And so the Geeq protocol itself uses the token as a system of rewards for work that is correct. Mm-hmm. And we call it honest work because it has to be provable. Mm-hmm. And there's only one way to prove it, which is, the short way of saying that is it's honest. You haven't cheated. Mm-hmm. You haven't tried to benefit yourself at the expense of anyone else. Mm-hmm. So this goes through the validation part of the infrastructure. Let's take one chain out of many. That one chain has its own network of nodes. Mm-hmm. So very quickly, those nodes do work. And if they can prove that they've done the correct work, they get paid. And that's automatic through the protocol. So there's no auction bidding, there's no competing for work. They just show up, and if they've done the right thing, they get paid in Geeq, and that's automatic, and it goes into their coin account, and they can leave, and we keep track of them. They can be trying to get away with stuff, and they're audited. The system self-audits. So it's a way to make the mechanism flow. Mm-hmm. of this sort of labor market. I think of it as a labor market of nodes.
Interesting. And with that in the works, I feel like that's obviously an important part of validating and ensuring a proper consensus and throughout the ecosystem. I know there's a lot more to develop with the multi-chain part and the dApps and end users. What can you tell us about the roadmap for the next 6 months to a year, and what's the most important parts of Geeq still to come out?
Everything's important. I'll tell you what we're focusing on. What we're focusing on right now is building this, what we're calling Geeq native apps. So we want the system to be usable from the beginning. And the only way to show that it's usable from the beginning really is to identify problems that exist and we can solve, and start getting people to use them, so that we have word of mouth, we have enterprise adoption, and people can see how it works, right? So we're very focused on our first Geeq app, which is an attestation app. We have a demo out. I don't know if I can advertise the website, but you can find it on certified.geekdata.io. Okay. And it's exciting because it's starting to see the fruition of, here's the infrastructure. It supports this certification process, which is the perfect use case for blockchain. Because it's validating things, right? That's what you want in a ledger that you hope isn't changed. And for Geeq, we can always find one that hasn't been changed and that's provable. Sorry. That's technical again. But what shows on top is that it just looks like an app. So it's a web app, and people are used to seeing that, and they put some data in, and we ask them if they want to sign it, and are you sure? And then off it goes, and they don't see that from the app it has to talk to the blockchain, and the blockchain does its thing, and they don't have to worry about it unless you're really technical, and then it's really cool. And then the back end is the block explorer, which you can check to make sure everything's okay. But from an easy user standpoint, that's what we think. That's what we've been getting a lot of feedback, that people like that approach. Just make an app work, please. I understand that. And then, blockchain, cool.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I always say blockchain will reach mainstream when the mainstream doesn't know that they're using it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think that's right.
Great, Stephanie. Well, I will leave the link to that native app in the description box below. And we don't have a lot of time left, but for the viewers that also just want to learn about these other roadmap updates and just overall on the protocol, and to find the majority of the Geeq community that's speaking about it, what is the best way for them to get involved on that front?
I would love to give you our socials. The website is geeq.io. We have explainers, we have articles, we have all our announcements, we have pointers to all the tests. Please try the tests. We want the people to break it before we push it out as product. So feedback, bug reports, everything is set up for that. And then follow us on Twitter, we're Geeq Official. Find us on Telegram, we're Geeq Official. Geeq, Geeq, has been taken by like rappers and things. So we're Geeq Official.
Great. Thank you, Stephanie. I will leave the links in the description box below as well to make it easy for the viewers. Appreciate you coming on and speaking about the protocol. All the best with all the work you and your team still have yet to be done. And let's follow up in the near future.
Thanks so much. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.